Why just do more reps is making your speaking anxiety worse. So more reps, that's the advice everyone gives. Get out there, do more talks, treat it like you're at the gym, push through the nerves and just keep going and going and going and going until the nerves go away. But for most speakers and people that want to speak, reps isn't actually fixing the problem and it could actually be making it worse. So I've trained over 5,000 people, 1,200 speakers over the last 15 years. And here's what I keep seeing. Firstly, it's the wrong exercise. Think about this like going to the gym for a second. If you're doing the wrong exercise, more reps isn't actually going to support you to build muscle. You're just getting very efficient at doing the wrong thing. You might feel busy, you might feel productive, you might tell your friends how much you've been doing, and you might feel like you're making progress, but you're actually moving in the wrong direction. And that's exactly what happens to a lot of people when they first start speaking. Every time you get on stage, while your nervous system is in survival mode, your breath is held, the body's tense, you're not making proper eye contact, you're scrambling to get through it. You're not actually practicing speaking, you're just practicing survival on stage in front of a group of people, which it's fun, it's a good skill to practice. You might have to survive being on stage more than once in your life, but it's not the same as effective, influential speaking. They're two completely different skill sets. The audience unconsciously mirrors everything a speaker does. So if you've got tension in your breath, if there's restriction, if there's anxiety, it's actually going to impede your ability to breathe freely and for the audience to receive your message. If you're holding tension, they're unconsciously going to mirror that tension. If you're in your head, it's going to take them into their head. If you can be present, they're going to meet you inside of that presence. So whatever's happening consciously, and often I find when I train speakers unconsciously in their body, the audience is going to do that the same. So recognize that what lands in the room before you say a single word is your fear, not the content. The content and the words come on top of that. So no matter how many times you throw yourself in the river, if you're running from the alligator every single time, you're not becoming a better speaker. You're just becoming a more experienced alligator runner. So by the way, if what I'm describing sounds familiar, you've probably been putting in the reps and not shifting the way you know you should. I'd love to have a direct chat about it. You can book a call with one of my team in the description below and we can talk you through exactly where you are and what the next step might be for you. The link is right there. It'll take you 2 seconds to grab it. Anyway, let's go on. Point 2 is you have to know what metrics to track. So how do you actually know if the reps that you're doing are working? And here's the question you should be asking yourself. Is my experience on stage actually changing? So it's not did I get through it or did I survive or whatever. It's actually like, can I see improvements every time I'm on stage? Can I point to a clear shift between the last time I did this and this time I did it? So for example, is there more clarity? Am I taking up more space? Am I telling stories in a deeper, more compelling way? Is the audience noticeably more engaged than they were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago? Now, if you can't answer yes to those questions and you're just clocking in the reps and hoping, whatever, you're going to have to be honest with yourself. That isn't actual progress, it's just repetition of the same ceiling you've been stuck inside of. And this is where self-reflection becomes critical. So whether it's journaling, watching your talks back, being actually willing to see these blind spots, because this is the only way you're going to be able to track and measure your progress. And most people aren't measuring anything, they're just kind of counting and hoping they get somewhere. And underneath that, what people are actually afraid of, when we go a bit deeper, is they think they're afraid of public speaking, but they're not. What they're actually afraid of is being seen. And I've seen this time and time and time again, even with successful CEOs and first-time speakers. It's just a difference of what part of themselves they're afraid of being seen. And angled with the being seen is often the fear. It's the fear of judgment, of rejection, that they won't be loved, appreciated, their ideas won't be welcomed, and that they might be mocked or ridiculed or told that they're not good enough. So essentially it's some version of the fear of looking foolish, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being misunderstood. And public speaking just happens to be the place where all of that exposure happens at once in front of a room and there is absolutely nowhere to hide. So when people do a lot of reps, they don't become more comfortable being seen. Sometimes it just becomes a way to wear a bigger, thicker mask and tell themselves they're doing okay because it's uncomfortable to crack through and see what's underneath. So they become better at hiding. They wear more polished masks, they rehearse their facades more. There's words now layered on top of that with more words, and instead of getting clearer and more cut through, the message gets heavier, more protected, more confusing. It's like they just blast a whole bunch of words at the audience without actually having the refinement to track what's impactful here and what's the end goal that I want to deliver. So they should be feeling more connected to your message as you put in the reps. Now, we also know this as audience members. We can feel it when someone is performing a version of themselves rather than actually just being their natural self. There's plenty of research that backs this up, but when we feel that, when we experience it, when we can read someone who's putting on a character, instantly breaks trust and rapport. You probably know this if you've ever been around like a dodgy salesperson or something like that. It's like you don't know why, but you just can't trust them. So quick reminder, if you want to support this with not just more information, there's a booking link in the description to have a chat with one of the team. And honestly, like a single conversation here can save you years and years and years of reps. And even when I've worked with like 7-figure speakers, they're like, wow, there's bits you're pulling out of me that I didn't even know were there. So we really uncovered the blind spots. Anyway, let's go on. So number 4, don't kill the nerves. Here is where most people go wrong when it comes to speaker training. A lot of people are doing reps to get rid of the nerves, to suppress the adrenaline, to try and calm themselves down, to arrive on stage feeling nothing. Sometimes I have people say to me, Miroslav, if I work with you, can you get rid of the fear? And we do not want to do that. It sounds counterintuitive, but we don't want to do that. The energy that's in your body before you speak, that heightened sensation, that is aliveness. That is the force that you want to move into the room when you start speaking. That's the energy that's bringing forth your message. Without it, your message just lands flat. If you arrive on stage and you feel empty or mediocre or whatever, it's like that's all you can give your audience unless you want to stand there generating and jumping around to get your energy up. That's also not necessary because we naturally come pre-armed, activated with energy before we come on stage. And the idea is to gift that energy to the room, to offer it up to them, not to suppress it. And the 2% refinements, I think of this like F1 driving, you know, the 2% refinements are channeling and directing it and letting it move through you rather than holding it down. And that's when it becomes precise. You know where the arrow is going even before you release it, and you know how it's going to hit people. You know that it's going to move tears and laughter, and it's going to have people walk away with the message that you intend, and you're not leaving anything to chance. So we want to create safety within this activation, not get rid of the activation itself, because that activation is unconsciously what your audience actually came to feel. They want to feel the way this message pulses inside you, not just the words. They could have read the words from home. Inside of this is actually one of the shadows of experienced speakers as well. And it's worth saying to you, to those of you that have done a lot of work here, because this shadow shows up a lot at the professional level, like intermediate to professional, people have really done a lot of stages before. Because when we get better as speakers, we find what works and we stick to it. And what this creates for us is an invisible ceiling. So you could have a signature talk, you get to know your jokes that land, you get to know your stories that hit every time, you get to know the sticky bits that people tell you afterwards, and we get stuck in a rut, but it can be easy to just keep repeating the same things. Which means, yes, we're getting the reps, but those reps are confined to a narrow range now. In a bad situation, it's like the same memorized talk to the same audience in the same type of room over and over and over again. And it's like we miss out on the fact that public speaking gives us a multitude of ways to express and to let a message land. And for people that master just the 1-1-1, it's like the anxiety still sits there the moment you change something. If you change an audience, if you change a topic, if you ask them to speak about something they haven't refined inside their head, now it's like you feel what we call the wobbles come back into the space. So whether you're judging yourself against a professional, recognize that they've probably done certain reps in a very particular style. And even at this level, like there's more growth. There's extra weight at this level too, because there's now a brand to uphold, a reputation, certain expectations around how you need to show up. And that weight makes it harder to grow into the next version of your speaking self. Because growing means deconstructing and innovating something that's brought you to this level. And there's a discomfort and now the stakes are higher. So the best time to do a lot of this refinement is actually early on, because there's less at stake. You can iterate more freely. No one has an expectation of you. And also, like, it's actually never too late. It just requires being honest about where your reps are growing you or whether they're just maintaining you at your current ceiling. I was working with a client once that had already built a 7-figure business on the base of speaking. She was very sharp, she dressed well, she loved her work. And when we started working together, I invited her to jump up and present so I can see how she speaks. And she went straight into her usual spiel, polished, sharp, very influential. And I paused there, I was like, hang on, let's pause. It was a bit like stopping a steam train because she'd done it so many times. And as she paused, I was like, can you take the audience in? Just breathe. And she stopped and she took a few breaths and looked down. Like, just take them in for a moment. How does that feel? And she's like, yeah, there's a bit of emotion there. It feels intimate. And it's like, as she was saying it, you could feel her almost pushing the emotion down. And I just asked again, I'm like, can you let them come in? Can you let them see you? And she said, it's scary. And you could feel like the ripples in her voice. And as I looked at her, because I was standing behind her, I stepped around to the corner of her, I could see tears pooling in the corner of her eyes. And she goes, I'm not even sure if I let my children into this place you're inviting me to go. And I took a breath with her. I was like, I know, I get it. Most speakers don't. Most of us are just on stage performing. But what would happen if you did allow them to meet you here? And just gently I invited her to breathe again. And this time when she breathed, the tears running down her cheeks, and she started sobbing gently. And it's like this mask she'd been holding onto for decades just started dropping off. And I asked her again, how does it feel to connect with them now, to let them into this place? It was like the sun had started shining through her face. And she was like, it is so different. It just feels like now I'm showing them all of me. I was like, exactly. What effect do you think that will have on them now when you speak? When you speak from this place instead of the previous masks you've worn? And she was nodding her head, and it's like it didn't need words, but she was like, yeah, more trust, more connection, more impact. They're actually going to believe what I say on a much deeper level, and I don't have to be the motivator anymore. It's like completely. And I think about this through my own experience when I first learned to snowboard. I spent years trying to learn how to carve. Carving is where you get up on the edge of the board and it allows you to turn and go really fast. I spent years trying to figure this out on my own. More runs, more time, more effort, more time on the mountain, just more. And I still hadn't fully got it. And one year we went away with a few of our friends, old friends from high school. And one of my friends, Sarah, jumped on a board and she started carving. And I was like, you've only been snowboarding for a couple of years. How did you learn to do this so well? And she was like, I spent last year like doing 2 weeks of training with an instructor. And I was like, oh my God, I've spent years and years and years being stubborn and trying to work this out on my own. And if I'd just been open enough to allow someone to see me and support me, God knows where I could have been in 5 years' time. So, her 2 weeks in the space of 1 year was like 5 years of me grinding it out alone. And the magic was when she was seeing me on the board, she was able to point out things to me that I couldn't see because of the experience she'd had. So a good instructor can point out directly what you're missing. They can hold the space for us that we don't know how to hold on our own, and to try extend ourselves into areas we're usually not willing to go. And instead of wasting years, we get there a lot quicker to the actual goal that we want to be in. So in my case, yes, I improved slowly. It was incremental. It was painful. But when I think about all the talks I gave throughout that period, the opportunities I was in front of, the impressions I was making, I think about who I could have been as opposed to who I was. Like, that's the real cost. The people I didn't reach because I was pushing to do it by myself. So it's not just the reps, it's all the missed opportunity inside of those reps. I recently had one of my clients, he went out and smashed it and did over 30 stages in 3 months. He came to our first influence training, went out just blazing. And I remember saying to him, I'm like, I wish you'd spoken to me more deeply before diving into all of this, because there's a few strategies I could have given you where all of these talks you did, you could have turned into business and profit and clients if you'd wanted to. But sometimes we just do it our way, and that's exactly what we need from the experience. So instead of asking yourself, how can I do more reps? Consider asking yourself a different question. How can I have a different experience of myself while speaking? How can I change my relationship to the stage? What if being truly connected to who you are in your body is what the reps were supposed to give you? Because that's what you're really looking for. And what can take years to stumble onto in your own is the recognition that you don't need to protect yourself on stage, that you're already safe up there, that you can show up open exactly as you are, and to see that the stage is just a mirror and a metaphor for life. And that is where the depth of your message actually comes from. It's not about a more polished version of you, it's just the most fullest, openest version of you, undefended, open, naked, fully expressed for people to receive from. Now, if this landed for you, and especially if you've been doing the reps and wondering why it's not shifting, I'd love you to book a call with one of our team. The link is in the description. We'll look at where you're at, what's keeping you in the same pattern, and ideally what needs to change for you to take the next step. The conversation won't cost you anything, but holding this off for another year might. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.